Dan and Lanny have done a terrific job talking about the government side of this policy debate. Allow me to talk about the private sector. IMF, World Bank, NASDAQ, Lockheed Martin, Mitsubishi, Sony, Department of Defense, Japanese Parliament, Canadian government agencies. They're all part of a club, not an exclusive club. In fact, a rapidly growing club. But these are just a few of the private and public sector organizations who have been publicly revealed to have suffered devastating cyber intrusion that has resulted in significant loss of intellectual property, state secrets, or otherwise caused material, economic, or national security harm. In fact, these organizations are a tiny minority that you've learned about in the media in recent years, compared to the population of organizations that has been compromised, successfully compromised through cyber means, and have managed to hide it from the press. Former Deputy Secretary of Defense Bill Lynn has revealed in the Foreign Affairs article that in 2008, classified DoD networks, by definition networks that are disconnected from the internet in combat zones, have been penetrated by a foreign intelligence agency. Sony acknowledged up to $171 million in losses as a result of an intrusion that they had suffered earlier this year from a hacktivist group Anonymous. NASDAQ reported a sophisticated and targeted intrusion believed to have originated from a nation-state actor that reportedly compromised their director's desk application, an information sharing platform used by boards of directors of public companies to share highly confidential information on these publicly traded companies. In August of this year, I revealed Operation Shady Rat, as I called it, a targeted nation-state sponsored 5-year-long set of intrusions into 70-plus global companies, government agencies, and nonprofits located in 14 countries around the globe, including the US, Western Europe, and a number of countries in the South China Sea area. These are not small countries, small companies or minor countries who one could argue have not spent sufficient resources on developing sufficient cybersecurity measures to put in place to protect themselves against basic intrusions. They're global multinational companies with multi-million-dollar security budgets, large and fairly competent security staffs, and many of them deploy a whole slew of security products, from firewalls and intrusion prevention systems to antivirus and whitelisting technologies. In fact, in my experience of spending more than 15 years, almost 15 years, on the defense side of the cybersecurity industry, I can tell you that every organization of any significant size with valuable information has been compromised in recent years. In fact, I define that there are only two types of companies in, let's say, Fortune 1000 set: those that know they've been compromised and those that don't yet know. There may be a third type, which is the companies that don't have anything valuable to steal. That's one way to defend yourself. The fact of the matter is that cyberspace today is an indefensible domain. And again, I speak about this from my experience in trying to spend 15 years defending it. A knowledgeable, well-financed, and patient adversary can get into any network that they care to spend the effort compromising. And in today's world of widespread nation-state cyber espionage activity, much of it originating from China, as reported in the latest NCIX report, this means any network. Today, there is no organization on the planet that can successfully defend a network connected to the internet against a compromise. And even some disconnected networks, such as classified networks, as reported by Secretary Lynn, or those controlling industrial equipment in Iran that were penetrated by Stuxnet, all of them are still highly vulnerable. And if Department of Defense or the most sophisticated of enterprises with multi-million-dollar security budgets can't defend themselves, what can we expect from the rest of the private industry? Utility companies, for example, operating our electric grid on tiny margins with shoestring budget. Does anyone actually think that they can defend themselves against a nation-state attack? What we're witnessing today, I believe, is transfer of wealth unprecedented in history that's taking place in the form of intellectual property from our country to our unscrupulous competitors, primarily state-owned industries in China. In fact, what they're doing is nothing short of raping and pillaging our country as well as the rest of the world, although we, of course, have the most to lose for our intellectual property. Allow me to tell you about a case of an operation that I uncovered earlier this year called Night Dragon. It was a long-term, 4-year-long term intrusion into about a dozen companies, multinational companies in the oil and gas sector. They were penetrated from hackers operating out of China, and those hackers were not after intellectual property of these companies. They were after negotiation documents, documents related to oil and gas field explorations that they were using to determine the bidding strategy for those oil fields. In fact, executives in those companies have told me that they have lost business to Chinese state oil company as a result of those intrusions. I believe that the hyperbole of Cyber Pearl Harbor or Cyber 9/11 that's sometimes used by officials in D.C. is not an appropriate way to describe the current situation. In fact, what we're witnessing today is a death by 1,000 cut scenario, where every single day our private sector and government sector has been penetrated successfully and repeatedly with intellectual property and sensitive business information, such as pricing information, customer lists, intellectual property, and the rest, is being exfiltrated and used to gain competitive advantage over our industry. That presents a massive economic threat to our country, as well as a national security threat from the loss of state secrets, as well as from the decline of competitiveness of our private sector. Is it hopeless? I don't believe so. I do believe that government agencies such as the NSA have extraordinary capabilities, but it is a fallacy to presume that if only we let the government become our security provider, the problem will go away. In fact, the DoD intrusions of recent years, including those on the classified networks, show us that that is not the case. If we face nation-state intelligence agencies and armed forces, however, do we really expect the private sector to be up to the job if the government itself cannot do it? Raising the security bar is important. You want to have a lock on the door to prevent anyone from the street to come in and take what they like, but you have to realize that lock on the door is not going to prevent an armed division from successfully laying siege to a house. That is, in fact, what we're facing today in cyberspace. Government help to private industry, I believe, is important, and initiatives such as the DIB pilot, for example, that was launched in recent years to help bring some of the intelligence that the government has, the Department of Defense has, from the classified side to protect the defense industrial base are important and should be expanded to protect other industries, but it is not a silver bullet. What we need, I believe, is to create a deterrent value where other countries, organizations, or individuals that they harbor cannot attack us at will, nonstop, with impunity, either for espionage purposes or worse. Attribution in cyberspace, I believe, is not a problem. A lot of people talk about this as a theoretical a problem that cannot be solved. There are unquestionably technical challenges to attribution. However, in virtually every case that I've witnessed in my career investigating intrusions, you could get successful attribution, perhaps not in real time, but after the fact, with high degree of confidence, at least down to the nation-state level attacker. We should not hide behind the problem of attribution when facing the real facts of the intrusions that we face today, which we know and can attribute to Russia and China, as the NCIX report revealed earlier this month. If we know who did it, how can we influence them? I believe we need to explore all types of lines of influence that we can pull on as it relates to both China, the Chinese in particular, as well as the Russians. They don't have to be cyber. Yes, what they're doing is creating a massive economic impact on our country, negative economic impact to our country. One of the ways we can retaliate is by changing our policy on espionage. Today, we, as a policy, do not engage in espionage for the benefits of our private sector. Virtually everyone else in the world does. It's not just China, it's not just Russia, it's the French, it's even our friends the Brits. So isn't it a little bit hypocritical of us to scream bloody murder when we voluntarily put one of our hands behind our back, and yet everyone else in the world chooses not to limit themselves in the same way? But at the end of the day, that's not going to solve the problem completely, although it may help level some of the economic disadvantages that our industry faces today. What I believe we need to figure out, in terms of at least those two countries, is what they care the most about when it comes to cyberspace. In my conversations in environments where representatives from Chinese Foreign Ministry, for example, or Russian armed forces were present, it is clear what they're concerned the most about in cyberspace. Their concerns are not the same as ours. We are concerned about loss of intellectual property, damage to our critical infrastructure. They're much less concerned about those things. They're concerned about regime preservation. In fact, the Chinese proclaimed in one meeting that I attended earlier this summer is that they view cybersecurity as a rumor spreading on Facebook that causes social unrest in China.
Content.
Exactly.
Content.
Well, if they're so concerned about rumors on Facebook, perhaps we should help start some. There are ways we can influence their behavior in a way that I believe they truly care about, and find ways to get them to limit their activities on the cyber espionage front and raise the cost, ultimately, both through defensive measures, offense, and other points of influence, such as, for example, exploring trade sanctions and routes through WTO to address this activity. Thank you very much.
Dmitri, thank you.